Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Laura Fortman, and okay, I thought I already hit the, yes, I understand we're being recorded. I'm Laura Fortman, I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Labor, and I did want to remind everyone that the meeting is being viewed by the public and it is being recorded. Also, I wanted you to know that our Assistant Attorney General, Nancy Makarowski, will be sitting in on this meeting, as well as Marianne Turowski, who's a Senior Policy Advisor in the Governor's Office. All of the materials that we're going to use this afternoon will be posted on the website. You did receive some materials ahead of time, and those will also be posted and publicly available. The beginning of this week, I think there was an announcement that I'm sure everyone here had heard. The governor was rolling out the beginning of the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan, and included in that plan was $80 million to go into the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund to mitigate any tax increases as we move forward. The tax schedule will be determined the end of this month. And as soon as that is available, we will make sure that not only you know about it, but also that there is a public announcement and a press release about it as well. I wanted to also, we will be doing introductions in a minute. I did want to just remind folks who may be watching that this group is being convened in compliance with Section 38 in LD 1564, which directed the Commissioner of Labor to convene a group of stakeholders who represented the interests of employers and employees, and that our charge is to look at specific issues under unemployment insurance. And all of you here in this meeting were selected because of your experience with the unemployment insurance program, as well as because of the importance of having the voices of the constituencies you represent be part of that conversation. So with that, I'd like to just have people introduce themselves. Again, I think most of you know each other, but for anyone who is viewing, they may not know who is here. So I think maybe I'll start with you, David, since you were the first one at the meeting.
Thank you. My name is David Clow. I'm State Director in Maine for the National Federation of Independent Business, representing small business owners in Maine. Also, I'm with I represent the Maine Staffing Association.
Thank you. Desti?
Good afternoon. I'm Desti Homan-Sprague. I use she and her pronouns. I'm the Executive Director of the Maine Women's Lobby.
Great, thank you. Peter?
Good afternoon, Commissioner and everybody else. My name is Peter Gore. I'm the Executive Vice President of the Maine State Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you. And Matt Marks?
Yep, thank you. I'm Matt Marks with Associated General Contractors of Maine.
Okay. And Sue?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sue Hamlet. I'm a paralegal at Maine Equal Justice, and we represent the interests of people with low income in Maine.
Okay, great. Greg?
Yes, my name is Greg Dougal, and I'm Director of Government Affairs for Hospitality Maine. We represent about 1,000 restaurants and lodging properties, in addition to members that service them.
Thank you. And Dana?
Thanks, Commissioner. Got some feedback. I'm Dana Duran, Executive Director of the Professional Logging Contractors of Maine. We're a trade association that represents over 200 logging and trucking companies throughout the state that employ over 3,000 people.
Great. And Ben?
Hi, everybody. My name is Ben Grant. I'm a partner at McTeague Higbee, a law firm in Topsom, but I also act as outside counsel to the Maine AFL-CIO. And as it relates to unemployment, I have been working on behalf of the Maine Education Association, on behalf of many of their members over the last 2 years. I do apologize for my informality. I'm working out of my basement home. I am not, in fact, in a hostage situation. So thanks, everybody.
Well, that's reassuring. I'm glad you cleared that up, Ben. And Curtis.
Can't top that. I'm Curtis Picard with the Retail Association of Maine, representing retailers of all sizes.
Okay, great. And I did hear from Matt Schlobaum, and he will be joining us, but he will be late. I think that's everyone I see. Okay, terrific. Well, with that, there are a couple of the items that we are covering today. And Matt, I can't tell if it's coming from, if you've got like multiple speakers going on there, or, but I'm hearing that feedback too. The topics that we had said we were going to be covering today are WorkShare, RESEA, which is the Reemployment Services and Eligibility Assessment Program. The third item is methods of connecting employers and unemployed workers post-pandemic, and then the effectiveness of the provisions of Title 26, Section 1044. So those are our agenda items, and we will kind of wrap up at the end of the day and talk about next steps. But to kind of kick us off, the way that I thought would be make the most and best use of our time is there will be short presentations on each of these topics. And after each presentation will be an opportunity for questions and answers. So the first topic that we're going to be talking about is WorkShare. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Laura Boyette. Again, the slide deck that we're using will be available after this presentation. And I believe that last night you received some background information about WorkShare as well. Laura?
Sure. Isaac, do you want to go ahead and move to the next slide? Thanks. I'm in the packets that you received in your last night, there was a lot of information about what the WorkShare program is all about. So I won't spend any time on that part, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the experience of the past year during the pandemic and some of the issues that were encountered and the planned improvements that we'll be making to that program. So during the last year, we actually had around 246 WorkShare plans were established, and it covered over 5,000 employees. By reducing the hours of those employees by a small amount, it prevented over 3,000 folks from being laid off entirely. And in most cases, it went fairly smoothly, but it was not smooth overall. Part of this is because pre-pandemic, we used to have 1 or 2 plans a year. So we had a very small staff that were associated with this program going into it before we started getting a lot of plans all at once, requests for plans all at once. It's not heavily automated at this particular point. It was primarily a paper-driven program, and it was processed manually. It was very labor intensive for both employers and for the UI staff that were managing this program from inside. They literally had to take all of the paper forms that came in and data enter all the information into the system. So that caused processing issues and benefit delays and problems. Next slide. So it became very evident from the experience that we had over the past year that we really needed to look at this program differently than we've had in the past. There's, one of the positive things that came out of last year was that whereas the program had always been looked at and was created as a layoff aversion plan, it also has some applicability to being able to help jumpstart recovery from a deep recession too. So given that, we think it will be used more in the future. So we're looking at improving the plan. We took a customer-centered approach. We interviewed 4 companies who had been using the plan over the prior year, 2 large companies, 1 medium company, and 1 small, and really kind of delved into how did they become aware of the program? What was their experience with the program? What kind of challenge, what worked well, what did not work well, those types of things, really trying to get at, and where were those pain points? Where did they experience the most problems? And some of the findings and comments that we got out of those interviews were that the process steps were very rigid. If you did them in the wrong order, it kind of stopped the benefit from going out for folks. There was inconsistency in payment timing. People file their weekly claims, usually for the most part on a Sunday, but the spreadsheet that employers complete and send in it coincides with a payroll time, which might be later in the week. So those weren't matching up very well. We couldn't pay the benefits until we got the spreadsheet. So there was inconsistency in payment timing. And also delays just from staffing trying to get all of the information into the system to process. There was no dashboard or view into the system for employers to be able to see what employee status was, what problems might be there, to really look at what was happening with their plan. There were not enough Department of Labor staff resources assigned to this program to meet the demand. Application questions designed for the claim application itself seemed to be designed more from those super familiar with unemployment and that was confusing to claimants who were applying under this, that it didn't vary much from the regular weekly application, even though the situation was a little different for those folks in WorkShare, and it seemed counterintuitive for many of them. That created problems or mistakes. And there was just a huge reliance on manual data entry by the employer and by our staff internally, which with this level of demand was causing some problems. Next slide. So we took that information and decided that there were a number of areas that we needed to work on. We needed to update some of the programming assigned to the WorkShare program to eliminate a lot of the system pain points that were causing some of the payment issues and delays. So there was a lot of internal work that's already been done. We wanted to create a secure portal. This has been done as well for employers to upload their weekly spreadsheet of all their claimant information. Prior to that, they were actually having to scan it and attach it to an email and send it in, which is not a secure way to send employee information. We also incorporated bot technology, robotic technology to speed up the processing, where the spreadsheets that came in could be uploaded into the system without having to be manually data entered. And the bot would go ahead and process everything for which there was a clean match. So that eliminated a lot of the delays that were happening. We also trained additional staff to support this program. In addition, we pursued a federal grant. It's not a large grant, but we're going to use that and supplement it and to make some long-term changes of futures. So we have a future state of what this program will look like. We want to fully automate it. And one of the things that we found was that whereas there was initial training on how to complete the weekly spreadsheet, it's complicated. So a lot of mistakes were being made from that because it didn't remember it. So we want to create some instructional videos that can be downloaded, very short ones, but nano videos that can help both claimants and employers understand how to use the program in an easier way than, say, a text intense or dense instruction manual kind of speak. So you use for those who are visual learners, and create videos that talk about the program better that can also be used for promotional activity. We also, not the Workshare, the way it's created, it is governed by overarching federal laws that are very prescriptive. And it's not the right program for every situation. So there's a lot of frustration with that, especially if you've got wanting to do a lot of changes in the number of hours or bring different people on and switch other people out. It's awkward for that. So we wanted to develop a self-assessment tool that could be on our website that an employer who might be interested in it could go through it and see if, is this going to be a good fit for the situation that I'm looking at here? We definitely want to fully automate the application process and make it an online initial application for the plan itself, and then the weekly spreadsheet certifications so that information is changed from week to week and they just need to make any kind of minor adjustments to it, check it over for accuracy, make sure no one is dropped off the plan, that type of thing. So we want to fully automate the program, which it's not now, have an employer log in so that they can access their Workshare plan account, have an inquiry screen and a dashboard where they could be able to see at a glance the status of their employees. Are there any claims that are getting hung up, where, how old it is, some basic reporting information that would be helpful to manage the plan from inside the company. We also want to redesign the weekly Workshare claim application for claimants so that using very plain, and we're trying to use this across the board and make changes so that the application questions are written in what we refer to as plain speak. You do not have to be an unemployment insurance expert to be able to understand it. Everyday language on this. And then we also want to create an internal Workshare dashboard for our own use so that we can manage the plans, get regular reports out of it. So these things the last few months have been really geared toward getting the last of the changes in for the federal programs and then closing out those programs. So there hasn't been a lot of bandwidth to be able to do a lot of this yet, but a lot of the design work for these pieces has been done, and we'll be in a position then to start implementing these things over the next year and a half. And I think that's the last one on Workshare.
So thank you, Laura. Given the task that we have in front of us, which is to provide, comments and feedback and the direction that Laura Boyette laid out, what are the things that you would like employers to know about this program? We had a meeting, I guess it was about a week or so ago, with U.S. Department of Labor Secretary Walsh, and there were a group of employers and employees there, along with the governor and the secretary, because he's very interested in this program. So we've been gathering all kinds of feedback about this program, but I'd be curious about what it is that you think is good about the program, changes that you would like to make about the program, and especially given that we're looking at a future state, based on what you've heard, what kind of feedback would you provide? And I think, Greg, you talked to some of your members about this.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I did. And thank you very much, Laura, for that presentation. All of that looks really great, to be honest with you. I was looking at the numbers again too, and to see that there's still 12 plans going when there used to be 1 or 2, even though we find ourselves in a position where there's labor shortage was pretty impressive. Yes, Commissioner, there were some responses. A lot of them, most of them, revolving around part-time employees. And I realized that there's regulations and limitations that are both in state law and federal law, but I just wanted to provide the information that was provided to me.
Yeah.
And maybe this is the place where there may be the ability to do something, but the fact, I had one individual whose workforce is primarily all part-time, at their request. They either work somewhere else or they don't want to work any additionally. They work what the hours they work, and that's good. And when he tried to make this fit his model, he couldn't, because it really isn't designed for part-time people. So I don't know what the answer to that is. The more I think about it, the more complicated in my mind it gets. But it certainly would be something that would be good to look at if that's possible to do. The next one is a little bit, and again, I did provide this to Isaac so everyone can look at that, they can see what I'm saying. Is seasonal employees, and not necessarily, I understand the nature of the definition of seasonal employee. I understand if somebody's open even longer than that amount, but they closed for 4 months, it's a whole different game. But the request was made by a couple of people that, just are busier in 6 months than they are in the other 6 months. A lot of people go on part-time, and it would be great if there was some sort of way that they could be included in this program as well. But of course, they would be, once again, part-time. And then one of our forward-thinking members, who is a very large proponent of educating her employees and helping them do so, thought that, maybe people that were going back to school in the profession of their choice, in the industry that they've chosen to be in, actually could get credit for education as part of the work that they would perform, to be able to get the work-share program, design the work-share program around the fact that some of the participants would actually be going to school rather than working for the diminished amount of time. And this is something that was connected to the community college system. And we're doing a lot of work with them, as is everybody else, to try to make this happen. So hopefully I didn't take too much time, and I'm sorry if I'm conveying other people's thoughts. That's always a difficult thing to do. So I'm not sure I can answer a lot of questions, but I'm happy to help in any way that I can.
Thank you, Greg. And Matt, you just joined. Do you want to just introduce yourself, because this is being viewed by the public?
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner. Matt Schlobohm, Executive Director of the Maine AFL-CIO, and apologies for being late. We have a board meeting the third Wednesday of the month in the same time slot, so I just ducked out of that as soon as I can. But good to be with you all.
Thank you. So we were talking about the WorkShare program and hearing a little bit from Greg about what some of his members said. On the employee side, are there things based on what you've heard that you think should be changes that you would make, or benefits that you've heard are helpful from this program from employees, or anything that you want to add about that? Or things that should be changed in the future state? We have this window where we've got a little bit of money and an interest in making improvements. You saw the ones that we had suggested.
Yeah, Commissioner, I was thinking a lot about the WorkShare program, participated in that roundtable last week or the week before. And it has many advantages for workers. But my question really has to do with federal limitations on the program. And it really dovetails nicely with what Greg was just saying. The benefit to workers is still tied to an eligible monetary. And so the most vulnerable workers in this WorkShare experience would be people who are very low income, are part-time, or most especially people who have recently joined or rejoined the workforce and who don't then have a monetary. And it would be really interesting to me to see if there's any room to look at being able to include those people in a WorkShare program somehow, so that they could be part of that team, even though they don't have a monetary eligibility. Many years ago, when my first full-time job was in Ontario, and it was in the early 80s, there was a recession. And I would have been in that situation. The firm I worked for went to 4 days a week. The 5th day, Fridays, we all took the day off and everybody got 2/3 of their normal pay for that week. So I got less than everybody else. I just joined the firm, but I was still able to participate, even though I was a brand new employee and did not have a long work history. And I think that that would, bringing those people in, if that's a possibility under federal law, which I don't know if it is, it could be really important. The other thing that I would say is that the more I thought about that, the more I thought about the role of the employer as having a kind of navigator role and being able to assist employees with their weekly claim, and also potentially to assist employees with at least an initial kind of eligibility for other benefits if their income dropped below a certain level, at least to sort of bring that to employees where that might come into play for them. Again, just trying to make sure that the very lowest income and most vulnerable workers get any support that they are entitled to in that situation.
Okay. Anything that you think, Greg had started talking about some of his members looking at the information ahead of time and determining it wasn't a good fit. You saw Laura Boyette's slide that said, the goal is to have some sort of a pre-assessment. Is there anything that you think would be helpful for employers to know as they're considering signing up for this program or not signing up for it, that we haven't already captured? That we still have an opportunity, you can provide feedback. I don't know if I mentioned it at the beginning of this, but we did put the website up. We do have a comment sheet that people can submit comments in, and we don't have to, we are trying to cover a lot of territory today. So we can just move on to the next topic, but I didn't want to cut anyone off if there was anything that you wanted to add on Workshare.
Commissioner Matt Marks, I think Greg nailed so we had similar responses based on Workshare. I also think the improvements that you listed are right on the money. Having the portal, the ability to do that electronically rather than paper was really probably the chief not complaint, but just, folks struggle a little bit with that. Sometimes if there were issues or such, of course, it occurred during a time when you had such high volume. So it's hard to judge what that looked like normally. But, and then I like the idea of the assessment tool. I think that makes sense. So from my perspective, I think those are good, solid improvements if they can be made.
Okay.
And Laura, can I just mention one other thing too? I mean, the rigidity of the program because of the current federal statute is a reality. However, I think it's really important to capture the ideas about where this program could play a larger role than it has when it was originally created just to be a layoff aversion program. We were looking at that as well. And we were able to kind of push the limit a little bit about allowing it to be used to perhaps bring back those who'd been temporarily laid off earlier than you might otherwise be able to do it as the economy was starting to come up, particularly in certain industries. It needed to reach a certain point of recovery before you could just bring everybody back full time. But if you could bring them back under a Workshare program apart, you could kind of ramp up and maybe jumpstart a recovery. We could not get that to bringing on new hires that had not worked for the company. So there are some things that I think that, I'm hearing in the discussions with my counterparts around the country that would make for good changes, and being so close to this experience, now's the time to try to push them at the congressional level on that too. So I think to the extent of getting your ideas around those aspects and all too, as we're working with delegations, there might be opportunities to to make the regulations that are currently in place more provide more flexibility for this program going forward.
Okay.
And
Oh,
you've got
Desti,
two
I'm
hands
sorry.
up.
Yep. I see one. I see Desti. Oh,
Greg is
Okay.
still up.
Yep.
Yeah.
I guess I would just follow up on Laura's comment just now, and to some extent Greg's as well, in putting the plug for flexibility, including part-time workers. We know that women are a lot more likely to work part-time. They're a lot more likely to want flexible hours or, work share kinds of relationships. And that's largely in part because of their childcare demands. And we know what a challenge that is for so many families right now. So in order to keep women attached to the workforce, we have to really be thinking about how we maximize flexibility and address part-time work. And particularly in light of how many women have been sort of purged from the workforce over the last 18 months, knowing that they are coming, we hope that many of them will be coming back into the workforce, right, over the next year. But that means that they may not be as eligible for programming because they will be recently hired into roles, as Laura was saying. So I guess I'm just reiterating with that gender equity lens and thanking both of you for your comments.
Okay, and Greg?
Yes, very quickly. A lot of people address the cumbersome nature of the program, and I think that Laura has done a very nice job of explaining that. But I think a lot of people attempted to manage their own situation using partial unemployment, and I don't think they were very successful. A lot of them were not very, some people were, they did a very good job, but it takes a fair amount of time to be able to keep track of that. So I think trying to encompass a program that encourages people to participate, where everybody gets the right guidance and they're doing the right things, is a critical piece for this. So we certainly would love to see that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so again, we've got a lot that we're covering today. You can send additional thoughts and comments our way, but I'd like to move into the next topic, which is the RESEA program. And we'll have some slides on that. And also I'll turn it over to Andrew Robinson to lead us through this portion of the presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner Fortman. As Commissioner Fortman said, my name is Andrew Robinson, and I am the program manager for the RESEA program, which is administered through the Bureau of Employment Services in conjunction with the Bureau of Unemployment Compensation. So let's first talk about what is RSEA. RSEA is the Reemployment Services and Eligibility Assessment Program. This program is jointly administered through the Bureau of Employment Compensation and the Bureau of Employment Services. Really, our goal is to help individuals receiving UI benefits quickly find sustainable, good-paying jobs, which will reduce ongoing reliance on unemployment benefits and ensure that individuals receiving UI benefits satisfy their weekly requirement of being able and available to work and actively seeking work. The program really has four purposes. We really want to reduce the UI duration through improved employment outcomes. We want to strengthen the UI program's integrity. We want to promote alignment with the vision of Workforce Innovation and our Opportunity Act. And we want to establish RESEA as an entry point to other workforce system partners. So what does an RSEA session consists of? In the black, you'll see the things from the main department or from the Department of Labor that we have to cover. For example, an unemployment compensation eligibility review. In the red is how our staff achieve that. So the Department of Labor says we have to review their work search activities. We do that by logging into their REME account and going over their work search activity logs. That will also has strengthens our program integrity. Relevant and individualized labor market reports. So all of these things that we do are individualized to the claimant's or customer's needs. We prepare individual labor market reports so they know, for example, if they're working in Aroostook County, they'll know the labor market report for Aroostook County. Or if they're working out of Sanford, Biddeford, they'll get individualized labor market reports. We do that using data through the Career One Stop, ONET, MySkills, and MyFuture. We enroll them in a Wagner Pizer Act Fund employment services. We're going to develop an individual reemployment plan. Again, these are all individualized documents. So I know in the past that they may have been a group setting. These are all one-on-one sessions that they're meeting with an employment counselor. We're going to do relevant referrals to services, jobs, or other agencies, and enhance job matching referral profile assistance with MJL. So within MJL, we're going to make sure that their main job link, within main job link, we're going to make sure that their profile is set up correctly, that they have a resume on file. And this is all things that the Department of Labor says that we need to do. And as we do that, we're going to show them how to do a job search within main job link. And our counselors were actually going to recommend a job that suits the needs of the customer and their individual demands. We also, next slide, we also have participate in reemployment services at levels appropriate to meet their individual's needs. So again, these are all individual needs. So we understand that not everyone is on the same employment path. They may have different needs. So we're going to assess, and the Department of Labor says that we have to give them one of these things or recommend one of these services. So whether it be access to the main job guide, which we give all of them anyways, tools and tips and strategies on conducting job search. We only have to give them one. We usually cover all of them. Again, depending on the customer's ability and needs, we may cover one, we may cover all of them. And then we need to do one of the following career services based on their needs. So we can refer them to our training or other workforce activities. We can do financial aid resources. We can do a career readiness, including a resume or writing and interviewing skills. So again, all individualized based on what the customer comes to us with their needs and wants. So currently, you'll see some ratings. Each one of our participants that participates in an RSEA session is given a feedback survey or asked to participate in a feedback survey. Right now, 4.82% are giving, we're having an average rating of 4.82 on how satisfied people are with their RSEA appointment. A 4.89 that the information was presented in a clear and useful manner. And 4.53 rating on people finding that they're confident in finding their next job with the RSEA session. Two success stories that I'd like to share with you. One was about Robin. Robin was an older worker. She was employed in the dental industry, but laid off due to COVID. We were able to counter her challenges by discussing the labor market report. We used ONET to show her current wages and encouraged her to attend an over 55 workshop. 2 weeks later, we followed up with Robin. She was in the middle of job negotiations. A company had made her an offer, but she countered with a slightly higher salary. Robin reached out to us the following week to thank us, know that she had gotten her job at the requested rate of pay. So that's a success story from Robin. Steve had recently been laid off from his employer due to a shutdown. He was formerly incarcerated and had barriers to work. We're able to share information with him on criminal history workshops, which he attended. When we followed up with Steve, he stated that his recent knowledge of ONET allowed him to increase his job search options. And as a result, he had returned to work full time. This new position that he actually got, he told us he was making more than his previous employers. So these are just two examples of customers that have found great value in these personalized RSCA sessions. I'd like to take you along a journey. So as you look at the slide, you notice that this is their road to reemployment. You'll notice that the road isn't a straight highway. As we know, getting back to work isn't always a straight shot down 95. This road turns and twists, but I'd like to take you along it. So first, we're going to start by having the customers, they'll enter unemployment. Their participants will be notified that they've been selected for RSCA when they're within their first 5 weeks of filing for unemployment. In preparation for their appointment, once selected, they get a notice mailed to their house through the U.S. Postal Service, as well as being uploaded to their REMI or online account to let them know that they have a week to select a date and time for their appointment. This is new for us. Before we had scheduled them for them, it's come as a best of kind from other states that if we give them the choice of date and time, they're more likely to attend. So that's something that we're very proud of. We have implemented a self-selection so they can go right online and choose the date and time that works best for them. If they don't choose a date and time, one will be chosen for them, as this program again is once selected is mandatory. The customer is then going to receive a follow-up call from the career counselor to let them know that they've been selected. So if they don't get their mail or if they don't check their REMI account, they're still going to get a personalized phone call from the individual counselor that they're working with to let them know that they've been selected. A week before their scheduled session, they're emailed a pre-appointment survey. And what that survey does is it asks them, what are some of the challenges that you face in reemployment? What do you need help with? What do you want to focus on this session? You know, what do you want to get out of it? We don't want to in information download during these sessions. We want them to be very interactive, and we want to meet the needs of the customer and what are their goals. 2 days before their appointment, they're also emailed a reminder that part of unemployment means that they have to have an active job profile on main job links, as well as a resume posted. So we just remind them of that and say, you know, if you haven't done that, please do so. And if they haven't, we will do that during this session with them. The day before their appointment, the customer receives an email reminder about their appointment. So that gives us 5 contacts with this customer before we even have our RSCA session. Our RSCA session is 90 minutes and it's tailored to meet that individual's needs. We meet with the customer and try to remove as many challenges for the customers so they may return to work sooner. And then you'll see follow-up. Following the completion of the RSCA session, the customer will get emailed copies of materials covered, their next steps for reemployment, and a participation survey. 1 week after, they're going to receive a motivational email checking on their progress and offering additional career coaching if the customer chooses. And 2 weeks after, they're going to receive a phone call from their career coach to check on the reentry to job market and discuss any challenges that may still exist for this customer. So that's our quick journey along their reemployment entering to the job market. And lastly, I just wanted to point out, the follow-up. They're going to get copies of all of the copies emailed to them of things covered, of the next steps of the reemployment journey, and as well as that participation survey. So as I wrap up today, I just want to leave you with a couple of thoughts. These sessions are very personalized, and we work with the customers to remove challenges to employment so we can focus on good jobs with good wages. And throughout the customer's journey, we have a minimum of 9 communications with the customers and really want them to know that we're there for them and we're available to help them throughout their steps of the reemployment journey. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Andrew. This program, for those of you who have been around for a while, had stopped a few years ago, and it was restarted midway through, I don't know if we're through the pandemic yet, but midway through last year. And what, as you can hear from what Andrew was saying, it was revamped from the old model of doing it, that these are individual sessions. Also, and I'm not sure if you touched on this, Andrew, or not, but these are available virtually. And one of the complaints about the previous program was that it had to be in person. So if you were in, Fort Kent, you would have to drive to Presque Isle. And there are 12 Career Center locations across the state. Not all of them are, within a 15-minute drive for someone. And if someone is unemployed, paying for gas to get to these sessions was also one of the challenges. So these services are available virtually now, and they're available on a one-on-one, very customized basis. So those were, go ahead.
Thank you,
Andrew.
Commissioner. And that's a great point. These services are all virtual as well as we have a online rescheduling system as well. So if they get their appointment and they can't make it, they can reschedule right online for a time that is more convenient for them. We understand that, things come up, childcare issues, whatever the issue may be, that they do need to reschedule. So we do allow that right online as well, trying to make that as easy as possible for customers as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had also heard at least a few occasions where someone had a job interview and they were concerned that if they missed the RESCA program, their benefits would be cut, but they really wanted to go to the job interview. So that flexibility of being able to reschedule for, reasons like that are important. So again, what we'd like to hear from you are, what are the benefits you see of the program from both an employer perspective and an employee perspective? What are your concerns that you have? And what are the things, was there any sort of a key takeaway that you heard here about the program that you'd like to, for us to either build on or take into consideration?
So I'll
Curtis.
jump in. Yeah, I'll jump in. First of all, I really appreciate that presentation. It was very helpful in learning. It seems very comprehensive. And I especially appreciate the success stories you shared. I'd be interested to know from your perspective, folks that haven't been able to successfully navigate that program, why? Because it seems very comprehensive. And if it's not leading to reemployment, what are some of the stumbling blocks that you're still experiencing?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Once people start the program, the success, we have 100% graduation or success rate once we get them into the program. Our stumbling block that we have a little bit is customers may not be receiving their mail and or the information that we have in MaidJobLink or the REMI system to contact the customer. As we know, people move. They don't always, their first thought isn't, changing their address or changing their phone number. So the contact, getting to them, that is our biggest challenge. But once they find out that the program is mandatory or they know that they have to complete, they usually reach out to us and we can reschedule them within that week, if not the next week, to get that completed for them.
Other comments, questions? Things that you want us to be thinking about to improve the program?
I guess.
Go ahead, Peter.
I just have one question, Commissioner. What do you see as the client universe for this program, the size of the client universe for this program? Do you have any idea or?
Well, we would like it to be everyone, Peter.
I understand
that was our proposal. We got some pushback on that. I'm not sure what percentage we can get that information of people who are currently receiving unemployment go through the program, but we can check into that.
Sue had her hand up at 1.2.
Yeah, yes. So if someone fails to attend their appointment, whether that's virtual or in person, is there a fact finding that's held before their benefits are, before they're disqualified until they complete it?
Yes, absolutely. We realize that things come up for different reasons, and you know, they may be in the hospital and they can't reach out to us. It's not fair of us to, you know, stop their benefits until we can talk to them and meet them where they're at. So yes, they automatically do go to a fact finding, but their benefits don't stop, or hopefully never stop, but they wouldn't stop until they've had that fact finding and are able to talk to the adjudicator.
Right. And the adjudicator would let them know that there are good cause reasons that they might have missed this appointment. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Under Maine law, Sue, the good cause provisions do apply to this program. Yeah. That was put in years ago. Yeah. And I see Curtis has his hand up.
Yeah, and I know Kim Moore has heard this spiel before, but just making sure all the dots are being connected. You know, there's folks like our industry, Greg Dougal's industry, Matt Mark's industry, that provide credential training and workforce specific training for our respective industries. And so I know we've all been spending a lot of time to make sure that these credentials are available at every opportunity. So I'll just make that plea again to let folks know that if there are people going through RICEA, just know for our industry, there are retail credentials that are very easily achievable, available as part of this. And maybe it's incumbent within the WIOA funding stream already, but I just thought I'd beat that drum one more time.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Okay. Any other comments, questions, suggestions?
Are people able to do it by phone if they are, say, you know, it's January and they have no computer access and they're in the middle of the woods, so they can do it by phone as well?
Absolutely. We'll try to remove as many challenges as that we can, because it is best if we can do it virtually so we can share our screen and give them resources. But again, we understand, you know, we'll meet people where they're at. If, you know, we need to have it by a phone, and we have, just to get, maybe this is a success story, but we have had people that have had to, you know, drive to where they get good cell phone reception, let alone, you know, internet connection. And we'll do whatever we can to help people get back to reemployment.
Okay. I think with that, it's kind of a nice segue into the next piece, which is connecting employers with unemployed folks post-pandemic. And this is Kim Moore. You're going to lead us through this section.
Absolutely, happy to. So just to introduce myself to those who don't know me yet, I'm Kim Moore. I'm the director with the Bureau of Employment Services. And I'm here again to address how we're connecting job seekers to employment, particularly after the pandemic, arguably during the pandemic, but in our current situation. So I just wanted to start with a really quick primer that just to give you an overview. Job seekers will typically connect to us through career centers, and those house our and our partner services and programs. And together we provide a variety of employment and training services at no charge for Maine workers and businesses. So whether job seekers are looking to improve their job qualifications, explore a different profession, for a new career, or just plain struggling to reconnect with that new job, the Career Center is there to help. So in this past year, we have been forced to reevaluate and really restructure the way services are delivered, both to our job seekers and to our employers. So as you probably well know, traditionally customers were expected to come to one of our 12 brick and mortar locations statewide, literally come into our doors. And now we can literally meet them where they're at. And that has allowed us to serve thousands more customers each month, each quarter, whether it's through a virtual career coaching session with a consultant of the day, reaching out directly to connect with UI unemployment insurance claimants to offer coaching and relevant job referrals, whether by email, phone call. We were able to answer quick questions about available training programs through live chat. And we're also have established statewide and virtual job fairs that are focused on sector of interest. And so, of course, we've also expanded our reach through partnership with local libraries. We're offering live connections to consultants during scheduled days and times at, I believe we're up to at least 10 libraries right now. We've been working with our community partners to make sure they're aware of and connecting job seekers to highlighted employment opportunities through things like our weekly jobs newsletter. And we're intentionally partnering with our ethnic-based community organizations when responding to layoffs that might include speakers of other languages, ensuring that the information and rapid reemployment services for laid off workers are accessible to all. Go on to the next slide. Isaac, could you go to the next? There we go. So as we've learned to adjust our service delivery model, we're also learning about the unique needs of our current job seekers. So this may be familiar if you've attended any of our recent listening sessions, but on this slide, you'll see the results of a recent job seeker survey that was sent out to claimants and individuals registered with Maine JobLink, asking, what is preventing you from returning to work? And we received just over 2,600 responses. What rose to the top for our respondents was they weren't able to identify opportunities that match their skills. There's still a significant concern around health risks related to COVID-19, that job quality is essential. And again, respondents were noting the lack that they were seeing a lack of supportive wages, benefits, flexibilities in scheduling, safety, all top barriers, along with reliable childcare and those continued health concerns. So in response to this and recognizing that our close connection to employers really arms us with some information that is needed to overcome a lot of these identified barriers. You go to the next slide, Isaac. We recently launched, we call it soft launched. We did have a couple tech issues at the beginning, but we're through those now. But we recently launched what we're calling customized connections. And the way that we launched it at the beginning was what we made direct connections to recent job fair participants and directly through our live chat to help job seekers really find that perfect match. So what's different about this approach? So through customized connections, we're purposely putting the customer in the center. We're intentionally asking the questions that our consultants would naturally ask if a customer came in through our doors or called us on the phone or sent us an email. They're getting those answers beforehand. So it's allowing staff to prepare to establish that connection quickly and get that customer the first win. So this approach is more intensive, it's more personal, and it's really truly targeted to the individual before we've even met them. It assesses the skill sets, the work search and placement efforts needed to develop a personalized plan, kind of similar to what we're talking about with the RECA model. And then we're able to make those targeted job referrals. And through the use of this survey tool, we have an initial survey that job seekers will click on, about a 3-minute survey that asks some questions that I'll describe here in just a little bit. But again, through the survey responses and these individual discussions, customers are able to become aware of job and training opportunities and connect to those supports that are directly going to address their identified barriers. So the way that we collect this information is through that survey I was just talking about. And that allows us to analyze data and identify clusters of customers with similar skills and interests, which then lets us to design hiring events with employers that could be that perfect match. So our connections are made to individual employers. We can also make connections to individual employers, and we can also do these small, more focused job seeker events. And we're going to be able to track them, be able to also track those job placement outcomes and be able to view real time how we're doing statewide and by office. So this has been soft launched. I can tell you that we have received just over, about 11 o'clock this morning, received just over 50 responses to the survey, with about 38 of those respondents telling us that they're not currently working. 10 of them are telling us they're working, but they're looking for that perfect match. And then 4, interestingly, told us that they've already found that perfect match. And we've already reached out to all of them, even the folks who found that perfect match, because we want to know if we played a role in it, and we want to make sure that we do more of that. So as these responses come in, they're assigned by county to consultants who are kind of in the know. As we're looking at the responses, we're also trying to analyze and solve for any gaps or low response in each one of the counties. So we do ask them what type of work they're looking for. And we generally try to break that down for them by recognizing sectors: healthcare, office and administrative services, manufacturing, transportation, so on. Interestingly enough, this isn't that interesting. The most customers, that's only 5 right now, those general office and admin as their preferred work. Most are choosing to enter their own occupations, and that might be a list, or it's something that's not something that we normally would classify, like real estate, security officer, meat cutter, marine transportation management, and career center consultant, which we will be reaching out to them very quickly. So when asked what's their perfect job match, most respondents are mentioning remote work and flexible schedules. Several mention that work-life balance, and yes, a lot of them are still mentioning safe workplaces. So we are seeing a direct correlation to the responses from the survey that we just reviewed. Again, relevant job opportunities and additional skills training are rising to the top of the supports that folks are identifying that they need to get the job that they desire. Because we do allow multiple answers to that question, we are noticing that individuals are not identifying just one barrier. They're selecting between 2 and 4, with some identifying more than that. But generally, certainly more than one, generally falling between 2 and 4 barriers. So when we get these responses, staff reach out to the customers within 24 hours of receiving the survey results. They have that conversation, ask relevant questions, and listen to where the individuals are in their search. They do an assessment based on their skill levels, interests, education, goals, challenges, opportunities. And then based on that assessment, the individual is guided to design that customized job search. The consultant will recommend job openings and make referrals. Then they'll also give them access to services that will help them overcome barriers to employment. So when the customer leaves the conversation, they have a plan of action and the next steps are identified. We intentionally schedule follow-up to make sure that we're tracking them through their progress, that we're there if they start to stumble, and that we're celebrating with them and recording their job placements as they reach their achievements. So as we identify more trends, as we get more folks into the pipelines in each one of the counties, we will be developing those really focused, customized hiring events. You might call them speed dating events that are really, again, focused intentionally on the skills and needs of the job seekers and the employers. So again, creating that perfect match. So that's customized connections. We can keep going on and talk a little bit more about how we've really been focused on customer-centered design. And we're particularly proud of some of our recent efforts. This one here, you'll notice, is our employer resource guide. And we also have a complimentary job seeker resource guide. And both are aimed at helping folks to recognize the resources that are available, I say through the career centers, but not necessarily through our doors. So what we know about, what's our best advice, putting ourselves in the job seekers or the employer's shoes, asking and answering the questions that we hear most frequently, making those best recommendations, and then most importantly, testing the guides with actual customers and making sure that that's through a facilitated feedback session. So for these guides, that feedback was intentionally integrated into the final product, and you can of course find those on the Maine Career Center website. Pretty proud Another recent upgrade that was really intentionally integrating a customer-informed approach was the recent refresh of the Maine Job Link. Hopefully everybody's seen this by now, but just for reference, Maine Job Link is our state-maintained job posting board, and claimants for unemployment insurance are required to establish and maintain a profile on Maine Job Link, and that of course ensures connection to the Maine Career Center. So improvements beyond just this is a little scattered, so please trust me, it's much prettier than this, but our basic look has been updated, the feel has been updated, it is mobile friendly at this point, and then we've also made sure to update the job search so that job seekers have what they're looking for at a glance. So we have tags on there for wages, education, experience needed, hours available, lots of information on the posting, when the job expires. One of the things that we're very proud of at Maine Job Link is that these are up-to-date postings. So they are expired pretty frequently. Again, employers, of course, could extend them out if it's appropriate, but no shade on Indeed. It's a great resource as well, but you won't see a 3-month-old job posting on Maine Job Link unless it's still open. And again, we're also making sure that we're tagging jobs the way that job seekers want to search for them. So if they offer remote work, if there are available apprenticeships, those are all things that you can find on the Maine Job Link. We can go to the next one. And again, when you do put in your profile, which again is required in order to have a fully active profile, you're going to notice that over, you can't see my clicker, but you can see the green on the screen. You can see that for this individual, that job was a perfect match. It's a green, so that it matches their requirements around their desired wage, it matches their education, and it matches their experience level. So this should be a pretty good match. So those flags are right there at the top. The job description is prioritized. Lots of fields are combined for easy scanning. Again, and again, how to apply is really prominent with that box right at the top. So again, this was developed based on job seeker feedback about what they liked about, honestly, other job posting sites, and what they didn't like about our site and how those two compared. Same in conversations with employers, there were improvements on the back end to make upload of job descriptions easier, creation of an account much simpler and more intuitive. So all of that information was taken into the new design of the Maine Job Link. And again, we're pretty excited about that one. We've heard good feedback so far. And last, I think what we would wrap up with is just kind of the things that we have on the horizon for us. So we are really, really excited that we are in the next few months going to have expanded capacity to both maintain and further expand service delivery statewide with consultants who are really focused on connecting with those who've been struggling to re-enter the job market to those available employment opportunities. And we've just been informed that we have landed, they call it the Career Grant, in which we proposed in partnership with our local workforce development boards, the development of a true virtual American Job Center. So in partnership with those boards, we're going to be developing a customer-driven, purposefully designed, not pieced together, virtual American Job Center that will expand Maine's ability to safely connect with and serve job seekers and employers who may not have had the resources or ability to make meaningful contact through our bricks and mortar service delivery model. So through this investment, we're really focused on, of course, expanding that service delivery through technology, making sure that there is accessibility of services, making sure that there are fully integrated comprehensive services to Mainers statewide, no matter what program or service you're coming from, you can find it in one spot. Expand the understanding of customer needs through commitment to customer-centered design. We're modernizing our program referrals and enrollment processes, getting feedback real time from our customers, and of course, aligning with all of our other awesome partners and programs, services that are kind of also moving in this direction. So something that we are very, very excited about developing as we move forward into this new way of delivering services. So on that, I will wrap up, and Commissioner, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Kim. And I'm not, I'd be curious to hear from folks if there was anything there that was new information for you, or any comments. I do want to just also kind of commend Kim and her team. You know, since this summer, we've been hearing from employers saying, we're showing up at job fairs, but there are no workers there. What can be done? How do we turn that around? And that really was the impetus for this much deeper analysis of who's out there, what are the skills, and gathering those workers with the skills, and then reaching out and getting employers who are looking for those kinds of workers. So this is, as Kim said, it's a soft launch, but this is an attempt to address that. Pre-pandemic, we were frequently in a situation where we were trying to get employers to show up at job fairs. And so all of our focus had been on that. And we had, you know, employees were always the easier part of the equation. And things have really flipped around. We've always had both constituencies that that needed to be addressed, but at this point in time, it really is, who are the workers that are there, and then how do we make sure that we've got a good match with those employers. But I'll stop my commentary there and then open it up for thoughts, comments, feedback. Suggestions, Sue.
I'll speak if no one else will. First of all, while you were talking, Kim, at one point I pulled up the job link, and I really want to say it looks great. And I haven't looked at the Career Center soft launch yet, but it's really lovely to see the responsiveness to what job seekers were looking for there, and being able to sort and really be discerning in looking at what jobs make sense for you. So kudos. Looking at the list of barriers, I again think that the barriers sort of speak to low-income workers, women, and, you know, sort of a lack of childcare, a lack of transportation, feeling like if I take this job, what will happen to my other benefits? What will, you know, how will this all work together for me? How can I make a life that is sustainable and workable? It makes me wonder about a couple of things. One of them is, you know, sort of the Navigator program and how that will fit into all of this. Because there are some people, I think, how many people do we have now, claimants who are on a double dip disqualification, who may not understand that if they worked part-time with other benefits to continue to support them, that they could then requalify from that disqualification and start getting a partial unemployment benefit, for example, which is a really complicated idea. You can't, you know, but is there room for some kinds of education where the Department of Labor and DHHS sort of come together to say, here are the kinds of supports that you can get while you are working, you know, childcare subsidy, assistance finding childcare, which would, I expect, be through the CAPS. But is there a way to look at the DOL and DHHS together doing something that says, you know, you can continue to get these kind of supports to make your life workable, and work towards, you know, full-time work that can sustain you and your family at the same time. But then when I looked at the barriers, I thought many of these barriers, and I think I would add also, I talk to people every day who are struggling. I do direct legal assistance. And I talked to someone recently, for example, who is double dipped out and has always worked from home, even pre-pandemic, and is now looking at having no money to continue to pay her Spectrum bill, which is what's going to allow her to get a remote job that can support her. So, I think that it's often very low income or low wage workers, and especially people who have dependents, who need dependent care and who are struggling to figure out how to make that work, who are facing a lot of those barriers.
So Sue, if I was going to summarize what your recommendation is, it would be that DOL and DHHS look at services that both provide and see if there's a better job at making referrals or informing and educating kind of common clients.
Yes, I think that is correct. How do you wrap services around somebody? How do you say, here are your barriers and here are your fears, and at DOL, this is the part we do, but there are other people who can provide other parts of what you need to move forward.
Okay. And Peter, I couldn't tell if you were trying to jump in here.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, in looking back at the survey results and what people considered barriers, if you had drilled down into some of those to see what that means, because those are just words there, and we don't really know what that means. So, what's the differential between, my skill set doesn't match the jobs that are out there? There's a lot of jobs out there, and there are a lot of people with different skills. So when they don't match up and it's the first item on the list, I'm thinking to myself, well, what does that really mean? So maybe we can spend some time going back and you could give us some information about what that actually means.
Happy to respond to that if it's helpful.
Yeah, sure.
That's actually something we almost immediately identified through customized connections. Again, that's when somebody says that's my first barrier, that's the first thing we're going to try to address with them. And Peter, we did hear kind of that mismatch of skills. It may not be it might be more of a soft skill versus a hard skill, or it might be it's not really a skills mismatch, but it's how you represent it in how you apply for a job. So we are working with the consultants that are dedicated to this customized connection approach to make sure that we are understanding how to drill down and really understand what folks are meaning when they say lack of opportunities that match my skill set. That's an excellent point.
So Peter, the short answer is this was a very top line survey and the beginning of a process, and that there's more work that needs to be done. And we don't have a solid answer on exactly what that means, but we do know that it's an area we need more information about.
And we're
Sue?
sharing
I'm sorry,
those results with us. Are we going to get to see what some of that drill down is? Those, what those, top lines are when you, or the, once you drill down what those things are?
So it's an ongoing process. So we don't have those answers now, Peter, if that's the question. So when we get those answers, it'll be evolving, and we're happy to share that as we get that information.
I mean,
I would just.
That would be. Oh, I'm sorry, Sue. I just.
That's okay. Go ahead.
I think the crosstabs on that would be interesting for the employer community to see, because it helps them make changes in their place too. I mean, this is about everybody. I mean, the employers around here are so desperate to find workers. And there are people out there who are looking for work and who are receiving unemployment benefits. And employers want to be nimble and flexible as well. And so if they don't know the answers to some of these questions, and they are reflective on the survey group, I understand, but I think it would be helpful to share those with us once you start to get into those crosstabs about what it's all about.
The only thing oh, sorry, Laura.
No, that's okay. I think Desti had been trying to jump in here and then you, Sue.
Okay.
I really was just following up on Sue's comment, and Sue, you really said it as well or better than I could have. And I largely wanted to reiterate a lot of what you talked about. But my feeling in thinking about customized connections, and I will say I really appreciated everything that you talked about. It sounded like a great program. I was excited to hear about it. But if we're customizing, we've got to be thinking about how we customize the solutions to people's problems that are intractable. And childcare is just, and care for aging parents, care for other dependents in our lives is just right at the top of the list for folks. I work a lot with the UMaine system, and they say a lot of times that people who kind of fade away from the programs identify cost as the factor. And then when they actually have one-to-one conversations, the cost is associated with the childcare, the cost of the childcare in order to participate in the program. It's not really the cost of the program. And so we just know that that's this like multi-layered barrier that if we're going to be customizing our approach for people, we have to be taking into account right from the outset.
And Sue?
Yeah, I wanted to speak to that when you, Kim, were talking about soft skills. And it seems like with that customized connections, is there an opportunity to identify the skills that people identify themselves as having, but maybe they don't have the qualifications that they need to get a job in that career? And to really look at workforce development and training in that way. Like if you drill down and you say, what are my skills? Well, these are all the things I know how to do, but I don't have any letters after my name, so I can't apply for that job, even though that job would be a really good match for me. Then there's training and really talking about what are the resources that could help you get the training that you need to really take advantage of those skills that are part of who you are and do the job that you would like to do and that we need people to do in Maine. And, I want to put in a plug here for Parents of Scholars and the HOPE program that, there are people who might be able to get an employment benefit and dislocated worker benefits. And if they have kids, still be eligible for the supportive services from the HOPE program that would give them childcare and assistance with the other thing, books and the other things that they need to complete a training process.
So again, if I was going to summarize, I think what I heard from Peter was that as we get more information, make sure employers are aware of it as well, because they're struggling with the same issues of how do they adapt their workplace to attract the workers that they're looking for. And they're trying to be as nimble as possible, and they want this information too. And then how do we make sure as we're talking about those connections that we're digging deeper and recognizing that the solutions need to be packaged for the supports as well as just the things that typically fall into the Department of Labor portfolio. Is that accurate? Peter, I can't tell. Yep, okay. Okay, other things that we should be thinking about. I know that our kind of task with this group is to focus on these kind of key issues and questions, but I do want to say that the information that we're learning can be applied as we're looking at other opportunities that are coming up, such as the one that Kim Moore mentioned about the virtual career center. So how do we take all of this thinking and fold it into the work that we're doing on an ongoing basis? Curtis.
So I guess related to this thought, this discussion. How do we work to bridge the more immediate need? So as you all know, in retail right now, we're getting into the holiday season. We've had a lot of need, like a lot of industries, for a long time, but obviously that need is magnified between now and December. I recognize that retail is not going to be the career choice for a lot of people, but how do we take some of these people that are searching for their ultimate career choice and at least get them employed, even if it's temporarily, through the end of the year, or in the summertime, whether it's in hospitality or during construction season or whatever the industry is. I think that's a relevant conversation to be having right now, because we are desperate for people. We'll take them. We'll train them. There are jobs out there. We want to get them filled.
Yeah. And I think I'd say two things. One is that I think sometimes when we talk about unemployment, we think that everyone who is unemployed is collecting unemployment insurance. And I think everybody here knows that that's not accurate. I think our numbers from last week were that there were roughly 3,600 people collecting unemployment, so less than 4,000 people last week were collecting unemployment insurance benefits. So the pool of people who are collecting unemployment insurance is fairly small. The pool of people who are looking for work, maybe like recently graduated from school and are not yet in the workforce, or perhaps dropped out of the workforce and are trying to re-enter, is bigger than that. Also, those groups that we consider, kind of like left on the sidelines, are people that we are trying to make sure that we're aware of the opportunities that are out there. And I know that the hospitality sector, as well as I think the retail sector too, Curtis, pre-pandemic, was looking creatively at hiring people with disabilities, hiring formerly incarcerated folks, hiring older workers. It's like hiring new Mainers. I mean, those are the people we need to be thinking about as you're talking about what are we doing as the holiday season starts coming closer. So it's not just people who are collecting unemployment, because that pool is shrinking, every week. We're probably going to see a little bit of a bump as we transition from our, seasonal summer work. But for the most part, if all we do is focus on that group of people, that challenge, we need to be more creative than that, and we are trying to be. And that takes all of us working together.
Agreed. We've been trying to tap into all those population sources. Yeah, as you know, we've been working collaboratively on that.
And I think that's what we're looking at. How can we reinvigorate some of that work?
One thing just to flag based on your comment, Commissioner, which is helpful and a good reminder, is one of the things it speaks to is obviously our low UI recipiency rate, which Maine is not unique in that regard. But I think pre-pandemic it was only 26% of unemployed eligible workers were actually collecting UI. I think the department has been doing a lot of tremendous work to make UI like a reemployment pipeline, right? So it's like, yes, people need those benefits, but more, let's build a comprehensive reemployment system so we're getting people. We, for a long time, have felt like we need to do better on this recipiency rate issue, everywhere. This is not to single out Maine. This is a national problem. But I do think it's worth us thinking in this broader work we're doing going forward, that bucket of people who are out of the workforce, some of whom are eligible for UI but not collecting it for a whole slew of different complicated reasons. It's worth thinking about what are the tools at our disposal to. I think we're better served getting those people into jobs, helping employers get the labor they need, helping people get their lives back on track, if those people are actually in the UI system. So I just want to like name that dynamic as something that while there's differences across where we all sit, I do think there's a lot of shared interest in getting folks back into the workforce. And I think UI is an important tool, and that difference you named between those two categories just lifted that up.
Mm-hmm. And it's not one of the tasks of this particular group, Matt, to dig into the recipiency, but section 39 in that bill does assign us at the department the task of looking at the recipiency rate. So that is definitely on our to-do list between now and I think December. We have to produce a report on that.
Commissioner, I would ask, I think last time I had asked something similar. I think, to put all this in perspective, it is hard if we don't have an idea of what that number looks like, folks who are just not within the system, UI system, and not working right now. I've never seen anything quite like what we're seeing right now. And I know Greg and Curtis probably even harder for their folks, but so many businesses are closed or closed partially. And I'm just trying to wrap my head around it's hard to look at this without having some more data, I think. And to what Matt said, what is that number? What does that look like? How many people are not working and not collecting? And, it's to me, it could hit a crisis point. I've seen a lot of local businesses just close their doors in the last few months, some that have been around for a long time. Those jobs won't be back, at least for some duration, until those facilities are filled. So I think it'd be nice to know, from a more global perspective, like how many jobs are currently available, how many people are currently in the system, and then what is there a number or an analysis that can show how many people are sort of sitting on the sidelines. I appreciate the survey here, but there's a lot to this, like lack of opportunities to match my skill set, and that is the number one. And I think all of us are sitting here saying we're happy to train, we want to help do that, but it's hard to transition that number in my head when you drive by and there's, I don't know if anybody's tried to go to lunch on Monday anywhere with anybody, but it's nearly impossible in some towns to do that. And that's a scary sign to me. So, and our construction folks have companies who are doing training and they're doing recruiting bonuses. Some are $1,500, for recruiting. I mean, they've tried a bunch of stuff and there's some successes, but the hardest around, this is the hardest I've ever seen. And I think the data it is worth looking at the data if we can.
Yep. Other comments on this piece? If not, the fourth item we're scheduled to look at goes back to Laura Boyette. And this one caused some confusion for us as well. So I'm putting so in the bill that was passed, the question was, is Title 26, Section 1044 working effectively? That's what we're supposed to be looking at. So Laura, over to you. If you're talking, Laura, we can't hear you.
That's why Isaac wasn't moving to the next slide. Sorry about that. All right. So in looking at 1044, we believe that based on some of the discussions during the testimony and such of this, that this is really pertaining to the first bullet under there, waiver of rights, void, and penalty. And I think it's combined with another section of the law that we'll move to in just a minute. But this particular section involves a prohibition against trying to set up any kind of an agreement with an individual to waive, release, or commute their rights to receiving unemployment benefit, or any rights regarding coverage under the unemployment insurance program. And it additionally goes on to prohibit asking or requiring employees to pay or to cover some portion of the unemployment contributions that an employer pays based on the salary that they are receiving from the employer, or a portion of that salary. And the penalty in Maine law on that is it defines this as a Class E crime. So if it is prosecuted, that means under Maine law that is subject to incarceration up to 6 months and $1,000 fine for each one. So in a sense, if in an audit or something, or in a claim that someone filed, we come across any kind of employment agreement that whereby the individual has agreed to waive their rights to unemployment benefits, that's null and void from the perspective of the unemployment insurance program. And that also tracks with federal law, which actually prohibits an individual from even an individual from waiving his or her right to file for unemployment on that one. Can you move to the next slide, Isaac? There's another section of our law here that has been in place for quite a while. I'm not sure how widely known it is, but that is, well, part of it I think is very widely known, and that's the requirement that an employer post in a visible place within their organization the poster. It's one of the required posters, the Maine Employment Security Law, that that talks about what unemployment is and how to apply for it. And but that particular section of law also goes on to say that the employer will make available to any separating an employee from that employee a copy of that poster. It is a free poster. It's downloadable. It can be downloaded as a 8.5 by 11 inch sheet of paper, but that is supposed to be given to any separating employees so that they're aware of the program and aware of how to apply for it if they so wish to. That is also something that came up during the pandemic at the federal level under the Families First Act that Congress issued, where the department was to notify all employers of their requirement. They actually take action to change your law or your rules and to notify, to accomplish this, and to notify employers of that they need to let folks know when they're separating from unemployment, of the unemployment program. We did include that in our tax rate insert last September, just a reminder that this is also in our law. So we believe that that in combination with 1044 was part and parcel of what we were supposed to discuss as a group, and whether or not it's effective or how it can be made more effective.
So yeah, Isaac, I think you can remove the screen. We think that's what we're supposed to be talking about.
We're a little confused too.
If somebody else, and this was based on testimony that we heard, but when we started looking at the actual section, it was unclear. So Matt, you've got some.
Yeah,
Am I on the right track?
Yeah, so I'm posting in the chat report that Dr. Sandy Butler did in collaboration with Maine Equal Justice and the Maine AFL-CIO. The specific issue that we saw come up at a disturbing level was employers discouraging workers from filing for UI. And, this is a survey of 320 UI claimants. 1 in 12 of them in that survey, folks can look at it, reported that their employers discourage them from filing. And there's sort of all sorts of different stories and cases and dynamics there. But for us, it just like that's a pretty disturbing offense when it happens, and it at least begs the question: do folks know do employers know that's illegal? How is that currently being enforced? What tools do workers have, and do they know their rights to report that in any way if and when it happens? And like my sense is most employers obviously are not doing this, but I think during the pandemic it's certainly increased. And I think there are sectors where, outside of pandemic in more normal times, it does happen in a variety of subtle, not so subtle ways. So I think the question that, like, if one wants to get at the intent of the language in the law was really, do our current tools work to prevent this from happening? And if they are not working as effectively as they should, what should we do about that? How do we strengthen them? How do we strengthen the enforcement of the provisions that are clear that you can't, as an employer, discourage or deter someone for filing and applying for UI?
That's helpful. I think the maybe the way to start the question is are people aware of the poster? Does that information get out there broadly enough? With the federal requirement, as Laura Bouet said, we did send out a notice to employers as part of the annual notice around unemployment insurance. The federal program or requirement, it's not an ongoing program. It was just one of the requirements from the CARES Act. Also suggested including template language for employers to make it easier for employers. I think I'd like to hear from some of the. Yeah, we did not do a template.
We did not do that, but we could do that if that was seen as something that would be helpful.
Do you think there is general awareness? And I'd like to hear from one of the employers that this notification to employees is something that is supposed to happen when there is a separation under current Maine law.
I'm sorry, Laura, I just want to make sure I understand your question. So you're saying, as an employer rep, am I aware that the members in the chamber or other folks on here, are they putting up posters and are they making it aware? The answer to that question is yes. As far as I'm aware, I've not walked into a place of business. And again, these aren't posted where the average, member of the public would go. So they're out back in a break room somewhere. There's where, their employees congregate and they have access. I can tell you right where they are in this building that I'm working in. So I know they're there. If I heard Matt correctly, he said 1 in 12 indicated there was a problem with this. That's only 8%. So rather than, go back to some kind of a legislative solution, why don't we work with from an education standpoint to let employers know? Because, and the other thing too is, I will tell you, I do not know of a single employer who would have, who does not make, or their employees who don't know that unemployment insurance is available to them if they lose their jobs, particularly after the pandemic. Let's be clear about that. Whatever had happened, pre-pandemic, quasi post-pandemic, because we're not done yet. Everybody knows that unemployment insurance is out there and it's available to them. So if there's a question of whether there's enough information out there to workers when they're in the workplace or where that is done, then we can do some education work on that. I don't think it necessarily requires a legislative solution.
Peter, do you think that, I know I'm pretty comfortable that employers know that they're supposed to post it. Do you think they're aware that they're actually supposed to give them a copy of it when they terminate from that job and leave the employee?
So here's what I would say to that. It depends on how big the business is.
Okay. Mhm.
If they have an HR department, it's probably automatic.
Mhm.
If it's a small business with 5 or 6 people, I don't know the answer
Not-
to that question, Laura. Probably not. I'm just going to be honest with you. Does that mean we can't, filter the word down there to people and make sure we can work with local chambers and their members, us, NFIB? I mean, you've got you touch a lot of businesses in the state with the people you have on this group. The one group you don't have are the direct payers. That's a different issue. And a lot of those folks have their own HR departments. But I would say the larger the business, the greater the likelihood that the HR team is taking care of that. That would be my guess.
Mhm.
And I just want to be clear. I think there are 2 issues here. I mean, I think the poster piece is certainly important. I mean, I think it's certainly do workers know they have access to UI. The piece that was more troubling to us, and I think, in total fairness, this is 320 person survey. Peter's point is well taken, and I don't think it's 8% of workers in the state who are laid off. But the point that was most concerning to us was the discouraging and deterring and trying to not have workers file for unemployment, which I don't think is a common practice. And I think most employers obviously do not do that. But I do think it's certainly increased in the pandemic. And the question we think is important to grapple with from a public policy perspective is how widespread is that? And are the tools we have to remedy it working effectively? So that no worker is, in a position where they're getting laid off and is, told, well, you could apply for that, but you really shouldn't because I want to bring you back. And if you do, I might not, wink, wink, nod, nod. There's lots of different ways that goes down, of course.
So I heard a suggestion about increased education. Matt, I heard your concern that this may be although probably not widespread enough of a practice that it raises concerns about whether the protections that exist are strong enough. I'm just trying to figure out how we capture the feedback that we're getting on this. And Sue, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at that, 1 in 12 workers said that they were discouraged in some way from applying. I mean, it's weird that would happen more in the pandemic because employers' experience ratings weren't affected, right? So that's an odd thing, but I don't think all employers really got that. So I will say that I think sometimes that act of discouraging someone from an employer, discouraging someone from applying can happen in a variety of different ways. And it can happen because an employer doesn't understand the UI system all that well, right? So, if you quit, you're not going to be eligible for unemployment. Well, under some circumstances, if you quit a job, you are eligible for unemployment. So I think it happens in a variety of ways. I think it's probably important, and I have to say, reviewed that poster. I don't know what it says to employees about how one would report this to the department if it happened to you. Like if your employer did discourage you from filing for unemployment, what's your remedy? What do you do now? And I haven't read that closely enough to see what information is in there about that. But I do think that, for the department to say to employers, look, there really is a law about this. You can't do it. And there is a penalty. And, I wonder if any employer has ever, if this law has ever been enforced. So I think some kind of, there is a penalty on the books and this really is the law and you can't do it. That kind of education would be helpful. And I think also to recognize that you may be doing this in ways that you don't understand, like, well, if you quit, you can't get unemployment. Well, that may be true. It may not be true.
Peter?
Thanks. I would just say this, and Sue's point sort of goes to the heart of the issue with this and maybe some of the other things that we will talk about. And that is using the pandemic as a yardstick to measure performance in, with employers or what employers did or anything else on an ongoing basis. Because, we all remember one day we were at work and the next day we weren't, and the doors were closed. And a lot of employers were caught as much flat-footed as the employees who worked for them. And things that happened in those days, of early days of the pandemic, could have employers, I don't doubt that Sue's point is that, employers don't understand the small businesses, don't understand the system. Couldn't agree more. And I think that could they have said, Matt, look, I'm going to bring you back. This is a short term. You don't need to apply for unemployment insurance. Could that have happened? Sure. But it wasn't done out of maliciousness. As somebody just pointed out, it's not like their experiences ratings took a hit on this. It's just that using that as a yardstick for what employers might or might not have done, rightly or wrongly, is not a good yardstick, because employers in this state had never dealt with something like that before. And neither had anybody else, not in modern times. And I worry that, people will either lionize or demonize one side or the other based on what is really let's hope, a once in a lifetime event for all of us. So I think we should just keep that factor in mind, because that's the milieu under which we're operating right now, and what we were operating under 19 months ago when the lights got turned out on the economy.
David?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. A question for Lori Boyette. Does your office, or does the Bureau query people, or do they do any kind of sort of random sampling to try to understand if people are being discouraged or if they were properly informed about applying for unemployment benefits? Or do you have information from other states of the nature of the matter?
No, I don't, David. And, if over the years, I can remember times where we would come across it when we were out doing an audit or something like that and interviewing folks, and somebody saying, well, I have this contract that says I'm not eligible. But that was primarily, my recollection was primarily in the 90s and early 2000s. I haven't run across it. I'm not saying that there isn't that happening once in a while. And there was a series of town halls we did back in the early 2000s too, where trying to get the word out. I think it was around the misclassification task force or something like that. And in talking with the public that came in, we had some individuals come up, or say, either raise their hand in the meeting or come up to me and say, but I was told my employer told me I couldn't get unemployment, so I never applied. So we would never know about the ones that don't at least challenge that. Periodically we do get a lot of what we call block claims, or some states call them disputed claims. And that's where an individual files for unemployment that has no reported wages on the books. So the first thing we have to do is to turn it over to our tax auditors to try to determine whether or not there was an employment relationship with that individual and the business they work for. Sometimes we find that there should have been, and then we deal with that from a liability standpoint, and that person gets benefits. Sometimes we find that it is an independent contractor, and that's not the case. But, specifically around this issue, no, we have not done surveys on that. As folks are talking, we could add this as part of the checklist when we're out doing an employer audit to see, what kind of information do you provide to the employee when they leave? It's rarely that we would find, active discouragement probably in an audit situation, unless there was paper involved in that.
Thank you. I'm kind of wondering how you could drill down into the situation to try to identify that which might be a misunderstanding, inadvertent, unintentional, however you want to characterize it, and that which is not is trying to avoid the law and actively discourage people for whatever reason. That's not a misunderstanding. I'm just wondering if there's a way to isolate that. I would say that what Peter said about it's likely to show up in smaller companies is intuitively sounds correct, because they do not have HR departments. They're less familiar with the forms and laws and so forth, and they may not have a lot of experience with this. I was pleased to hear you say that there was a reminder in the last, I think, notice of the tax rate for 2021 to employers, and I would emphasize that all that you can do to educate and all that others can do to educate is very beneficial. But it is disturbing to hear that people may be discouraged by their employers, and it's discouraging if employers are doing that intentionally as a way to violate the law knowingly. And but we'd also be interested in whatever the problem is, that if there's a solution, to make sure the solution addresses the problem rather than is wide sweeping and has unintended consequences.
Yeah, and I'd have to relook at the poster, but I don't recall anything on the poster that talked about the prohibition. So, I mean, there's a couple of educational pieces that we could do fairly quickly. I mean, we'll have a new tax rate going out in December. So we could dedicate part of the insert that we put into it that talks about this, reminds them of the law, offers, assistance in coming up with a template if somebody would rather do it by letter versus handing them the poster, things like that. And then talking about, that there is a prohibition in our law about discouraging individuals. We could do that through an education piece that would go out to at least all of the, employers that are taxable. And we could include that maybe in billing for nonprofit. Those are direct reimbursable, nonprofits and governments and that sort of thing, to catch the others. So that's a possibility.
So my last question or point, with the mention in the survey of the respondents who said that they felt discouraged or thought they were discouraged from applying, did you reach out to the person conducting the survey or to the sponsors to see if you could get in contact with those who had responded that way to find out what their experience was, why they were giving that response?
I think the person who conducted a lot of those interviews and really did talk to a lot of those people was Chris Hastad, who would be here ordinarily. She's not able to be a part of this group. And she talked to a lot of those people. And I spoke to her recently, and Matt and I did. And she said there was a wide variety of scenarios there, right? Everything from the kind of nudge, nudge, wink, wink thing that Matt talked about to the kind of the employer assuming that they understood the eligibility criteria, right? When they did not. I think I want to be clear that I'm not saying there are a whole bunch of employers out there who are trying to, maliciously and deliberately, intentionally discourage people. I think there may be a few where that happens from time to time. But certainly what the survey shows is that there are people who felt after an interaction with their employer upon separation from employment that they had been discouraged, right? What was the employer's intention? What did the employer actually say? How did that interaction actually go down? Chris has talked to some of those people. I have not, but well, actually I have talked to some of them, but at least we can say that the message that they got was not a clear message from their employer saying, you have been separated from employment. You may or may not be eligible for unemployment. I can't tell you whether you'll be eligible or not, but it is your right to apply. like they didn't get that clear message, or at least they didn't take that in.
No, thank you.
So I think we're a little bit over time. I think that this was a really rich conversation. There are a couple of suggestions that I heard clearly come out of this. I also heard a request for data. There are 2 data requests from today's meeting, whether or not there may be 3 data requests. One, Peter, you wanted to know more of a drill down on what does this skills mismatch mean? Matt Marks was asking, what is the total pool of people who are not working, not connected to unemployment, and interested in finding jobs? Again, not sure that we can get that information. And then the third data request was from you, David, about is there any kind of survey tool or instrument that anyone is using to try to determine a percentage of employers that are discouraging workers from applying to unemployment, either something that has been done here that we could do or nationally. So again, things that we can check into, and we'll, I just wanted to acknowledge that we heard the request. I think with that, we wanted to remind folks that our next meeting is November 17th. And the items that are on the agenda for that day are streamline and facilitate application for UI benefits to increase access for unemployed workers, the creation of an employer liaison program and how that might be utilized, and to review the UI technology system to identify potential enhancements for improved access and streamline processes for claimants and businesses. We will do our best to try to pull together background information for you prior to the meeting, as well as find appropriate presentations about these topics. But if you have any information that you want to share with us before the meeting, please feel free to do so. We've got the working group web page, which is on here, and then the email as well to get information to us. All of the information that we've shared today will be posted on that web page. Trying to think if there's anything else, any other last comments, questions? If not, I want to thank you for showing up, for being willing to devote your time and your energy into these conversations and share your thoughts with us. I think we covered a lot of territory today. We have a lot more ahead of us. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for the very informative presentations. Thank you.
Thank you.